In the heart of America's industrial age, amidst the clamor of factory whistles and the grind of machinery, families in bustling factory towns crafted meals born out of necessity and resilience. These humble dishes, forged in the crucible of hardship, tell stories of survival, community, and ingenuity. Today, we uncover 15 long-forgotten recipes that once graced the tables of the working class, meals that nourished the backbone of a nation. Stay with us as we journey through flavors of the past, revealing culinary treasures hidden in history's shadows. In the dim glow of an early morning, the rhythmic clatter of factory machinery echoed through the narrow alleys of America's burgeoning industrial towns. As workers trudged towards the looming silhouettes of smokestacks, their minds were often preoccupied with the promise of a warm, hearty meal awaiting them at home. One such staple that graced many humble tables was the boiler room bean hash, a dish as unpretentious as its name, yet rich in history and sustenance. Emerging from the necessity of frugality, boiler room bean hash was a testament to the ingenuity of working-class families in the early 20th century. With limited resources and long hours spent in factories, these families mastered the art of transforming simple, affordable ingredients into nourishing meals. Beans, often dried and stored in bulk, became a cornerstone of their diet, providing essential protein and energy. The preparation of this hash was both practical and symbolic. Leftover beans were combined with whatever scraps of meat or vegetables were available, be it bits of salted pork, onions, or potatoes. These ingredients were then finely chopped and fried together, creating a savory medley that could be easily reheated and consumed at any time of day. The dish's name, boiler room, likely drew inspiration from the industrial environments that defined the era, reflecting both the cooking method and the workers' daily realities. Boiler room bean hash wasn't just a meal, it was a reflection of resilience and adaptability. In an age before refrigeration and modern conveniences, preserving food and minimizing waste were paramount. This hash exemplified how families made the most of their provisions, ensuring that nothing went to waste. Moreover, its versatility allowed for endless variations, depending on regional ingredients and personal preferences. Today, while the original recipe might have faded from mainstream culinary practices, the essence of boiler room bean hash lives on in various forms. Modern interpretations can be found in dishes like corned beef hash or vegetarian bean hashes, served in diners and homes across the country. These contemporary versions continue to honor the spirit of the original, celebrating resourcefulness, flavor, and the enduring legacy of America's working-class cuisine. As we delve deeper into these forgotten recipes, we uncover not just the flavors of the past, but the stories of perseverance and community that shaped them. Stay with us as we continue this culinary journey through history. In the clamor of early 20th century factory towns, where the relentless rhythm of machinery dictated daily life, the tin lunch pail pie emerged as a culinary emblem of resilience and ingenuity. This humble hand pie was more than sustenance. It was a testament to the resourcefulness of working-class families navigating the challenges of industrial America. Crafted to endure the rigors of a laborer's day, these pies were designed for practicality. Encased in a sturdy, often hot water crust, they housed a medley of affordable fillings, commonly minced meats, potatoes, onions, and seasonal vegetables. The robust pastry ensured that the pie could withstand the confines of a tin lunch pail without leaking or crumbling, making it an ideal meal for workers who lacked access to dining facilities or the luxury of cutlery. The evolution of the lunch pail itself mirrored the needs of the industrial workforce. Early versions were simple metal buckets, but over time, they transformed into compartmentalized containers with sections for liquids, solids, and even desserts. This innovation allowed for a more diverse and satisfying meal, with the tin lunch pail pie often occupying the central compartment, accompanied by items like hard-boiled eggs, pickles, or a slice of cake. Beyond its practical attributes, the tin lunch pail pie held cultural significance. It was a symbol of home and familial care, often prepared by wives or mothers who took pride in crafting nourishing meals for their loved ones. The act of preparing and packing these pies was imbued with affection, serving as a tangible connection between the worker and their family amidst the impersonal environment of the factory. Today, While the tin lunch pail pie may not feature prominently in contemporary cuisine, its legacy endures. Modern hand pies and pasties draw inspiration from this tradition, celebrating the enduring spirit of adaptability and care that defined an era. As we reflect on these culinary artifacts, we gain insight into the daily lives and values of those who built the foundations of modern industry, one pie at a time. In the early 20th century factory towns, where the air was thick with soot and the days were long and grueling, workers sought comfort in hearty, affordable meals. One such dish that emerged from this era was the smokestack sausage stew. This stew wasn't just a meal, it was a reflection of the resilience and ingenuity of the working class. The smokestack sausage stew has its roots in the communal cooking traditions of European immigrants, particularly those from Germany and Eastern Europe. They brought with them the concept of Eintopf, a one-pot meal that combined various ingredients into a single, nourishing dish. In the industrial towns of America, this translated into a stew that utilized smoked sausages, root vegetables, and legumes, ingredients that were both affordable and readily available. Typical ingredients: smoked sausages, such as kielbasa or metwurst; potatoes, onions, cabbage; beans, like white beans or lentils; herbs and spices, such as bay leaves, thyme, and paprika. These ingredients were simmered together to create a rich, flavorful stew that could feed large families and be reheated over several days. Preparation and cooking methods. Given the limited resources and time constraints of factory workers, the stew was designed for simplicity and efficiency. All ingredients were typically added to a single pot and left to simmer slowly over a fire or stove. This method not only saved time but also allowed the flavors to meld beautifully, resulting in a hearty meal that provided sustenance after a long day's work. Today, the smokestack sausage stew stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of the working class. Modern versions may incorporate a variety of vegetables and spices, but the core essence remains the same: a simple, hearty stew that brings comfort and warmth. It's a dish that reminds us of a time when meals were crafted with care, resourcefulness, and a deep sense of community. In the early 20th century factory towns, where the air was thick with soot and the days were long and grueling, workers sought comfort in hearty, affordable meals. One such dish that emerged from this era was the assembly line apple fritters. This sweet treat wasn't just a dessert, it was a reflection of the resilience and ingenuity of the working class. The assembly line apple fritters have their roots in the communal cooking traditions of European immigrants, particularly those from Germany and Eastern Europe. They brought with them the concept of beignet, a type of fried dough pastry. In the industrial towns of America, this translated into fritters that utilized apples, flour, and sugar, ingredients that were both affordable and readily available. Typical ingredients: apples, such as Granny Smith or Macintosh; flour, sugar, baking powder, cinnamon, oil for frying. These ingredients were mixed to create a batter, into which apple slices or chunks were dipped and then fried to golden perfection. Preparation and cooking methods. Given the limited resources and time constraints of factory workers, the fritters were designed for simplicity and efficiency. The batter could be prepared quickly, and the frying process was straightforward. This method not only saved time but also allowed for the creation of a delicious treat that provided a moment of sweetness in an otherwise arduous day. Today, the assembly line apple fritters stand as a testament to the enduring spirit of the working class. Modern versions may incorporate a variety of spices and glazes, but the core essence remains the same: a simple, sweet fritter that brings comfort and warmth. It's a dish that reminds us of a time when meals were crafted with care, resourcefulness, and a deep sense of community. In the early 20th century factory towns, where the air was thick with soot and the days were long and grueling, workers sought comfort in hearty, affordable meals. One such dish that emerged from this era was the Foundry flour flatbread. This humble bread wasn't just a meal, it was a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the working class. The Foundry flour flatbread has its roots in the communal cooking traditions of European immigrants, particularly those from Eastern Europe. They brought with them the concept of potplomic, a type of unleavened flatbread cooked on hot stones or metal surfaces. In the industrial towns of America, this translated into flatbreads that utilized simple ingredients like flour, water, and salt, ingredients that were both affordable and readily available. Typical ingredients: wheat flour, water, optional herbs or spices, e.g., caraway seeds. These ingredients were mixed to create a dough, which was then flattened and cooked on heated surfaces, such as metal sheets or stones, reflecting the resourcefulness of the workers. Preparation and cooking methods. Given the limited resources and time constraints of factory workers, the flatbread was designed for simplicity and efficiency. The dough could be prepared quickly, and the cooking process was straightforward. This method not only saved time but also allowed for the creation of a nourishing meal that provided sustenance during demanding workdays. Today, the Foundry floor flatbread stands as a symbol of the enduring spirit of the working class. Modern versions may incorporate a variety of flours and toppings, but the core essence remains the same: a simple, hearty flatbread that brings comfort and warmth. It's a dish that reminds us of a time when meals were crafted with care, resourcefulness, and a deep sense of community. In the shadow of the great mills and factories of early 20th century America, a small but mighty staple sustained the working class through long shifts and tough days: the millwrights' molasses muffins. Unlike the refined pastries of the elite, these muffins were born out of necessity, simplicity, and the deep-rooted tradition of stretching every ingredient to its fullest. Today, we uncover this forgotten recipe, a testament to the resilience and resourcefulness of factory families whose stories too often slip through the cracks of history. Molasses, a byproduct of sugar refining, was a prized sweetener among low-income families. Affordable and calorie-dense, it brought warmth and energy to the plainest of doughs. Millwrights' molasses muffins combined basic pantry staples: flour, baking soda, a pinch of salt, and just enough molasses to provide rich flavor and a dark amber hue. Occasionally, a splash of buttermilk or water helped soften the mixture into a thick, sticky batter. Baking these muffins was typically done in simple cast iron pans over wood or coal stoves, sometimes in communal kitchens where millwrights and their families gathered after grueling hours spent maintaining the towering machinery that powered America's industrial rise. These muffins were easy to make, quick to bake, and, most importantly, satisfying. Their dense texture and sweet, slightly bitter molasses tang made them a perfect companion to a morning coffee or a midday meal. Beyond nourishment, millwrights' molasses muffins embodied a sense of community and endurance. Each batch carried the echoes of factory whistles, the rhythm of clanging machines, and the pride of families who forged America's progress with sweat and grit. Though molasses muffins may no longer grace most modern tables, their legacy remains in the stories of hardworking Americans who turned modest ingredients into meals that fueled a nation. So next time you taste something simple yet hearty, remember, it could be a humble tribute to those millwrights who built the backbone of industrial America, one molasses muffin at a time. As we continue uncovering the hearty meals that powered America's low-class laborers, the next recipe brings us to the world of ironworkers, men who spent their days suspended high above the ground, forging the nation's skyline. Their fuel? The simple, savory ironworkers' onion griddle cakes, a humble yet sustaining dish that was as tough and resilient as the workers themselves. Born from necessity, these griddle cakes combined basic, inexpensive ingredients like flour, water, and onions to create a filling meal that could be cooked quickly over a cast iron griddle or open flame. Onions, often plentiful and cheap, were diced finely or grated into the batter, imparting a sweet, pungent flavor that balanced perfectly with the crispy edges and soft centers of the cakes. Sometimes a pinch of baking soda or salt was added to give the batter a light rise and enhance the taste. Ironworkers needed meals that were portable, easy to prepare, and packed with enough energy to sustain their physically demanding work. These griddle cakes were typically cooked in communal boarding houses or roadside shacks near construction sites, where ironworkers gathered to share stories, warmth, and food. Their golden brown crusts and hearty onion aroma made them comforting after long hours spent high on girders and beams. Though simple, ironworkers' onion griddle cakes are emblematic of a broader tradition of low-class American cooking, where creativity met scarcity and where every ingredient was maximized for nutrition and flavor. These cakes reflect the hardiness of the men who built America's industrial might, providing a tangible link to a forgotten culinary past. Next, we'll dive deeper into another dish that sustained these workers, keeping them fueled and connected through tough times. But for now, imagine the sizzling sound and rich aroma of onion griddle cakes fresh from the iron skillet, a taste of grit, history, and survival. As the rhythm of factory looms echoed through early 20th century textile towns, a humble yet hearty dish emerged from the threadbare kitchens of mill workers: textile turniptators. With wages barely stretching and food prices rising, families relied on what they could grow, forage, or trade, turnips and potatoes often being the most accessible. This recipe wasn't born in cookbooks, it was passed hand to hand in mill housing, whispered in lunch lines, and perfected through trial and error. At its heart, it was a simple skillet mash of boiled turnips and potatoes, pan-fried in leftover bacon grease or lard until golden and crusted. The flavors were earthy, peppery, and smoky, comforting and honest. Occasionally, a chopped onion or a splash of vinegar was added to bring life to the blandness, if the pantry allowed. Textile workers, especially in southern mill towns, needed dishes that were cheap, filling, and able to stretch across several mouths. This one delivered. It was cooked in bulk, served with cold cornbread or a wedge of hoe cake, and sometimes eaten cold for breakfast the next day. The bitterness of the turnips mirrored the toughness of life in the textile mills: long hours, child labor, poor ventilation, but also reflected the resourcefulness of the women who managed to make something out of nearly nothing. The dish represents more than survival. It speaks of a people bound together by shared hardship and quiet resilience. Textile turniptators didn't just feed stomachs, they kept spirits going, especially during the leanest winters and hardest strikes. And as we leave behind the steam and fibers of the textile era, we take with us this forgotten flavor of grit and gumption. But we're not done yet. More recipes still linger in the shadows of history, waiting to be rediscovered and remembered. In the blazing heart of the forge, where sparks flew and sweat poured, forge fire-fried dough was born, not in a cookbook, but on the edge of an anvil or the surface of a hot iron stove. This wasn't the sweet carnival-style fried dough we know today. No powdered sugar. No cinnamon swirl. This was survival food, quick, heavy, and hot, meant to fill the bellies of blacksmiths, ironworkers, and steel laborers who worked 12-hour shifts under brutal conditions. In mill towns and industrial zones, families living on the edge of poverty made use of what little flour, lard, and salt they had to produce this dense, chewy fried flatbread. Sometimes it was shaped into rough rounds and fried directly over a forge's residual heat, often in old cast iron pans darkened by years of soot and grease. If there was leftover meat drippings, it was a luxury. If not, the dough cooked in straight lard, browning at the edges and bubbling in the middle. The result was a golden slab, crisp outside, tender and bready inside, meant to be torn apart with calloused hands and shared across rickety wooden tables. This fried dough was more than just food. It was stamina, grit, and calories. Workers ate it with black coffee in the morning or with boiled beans in the evening. Kids sometimes dipped it in molasses or jam when available. Every family had a slightly different take. Some added cornmeal for crunch, others mixed in bits of onion or herbs grown in tiny garden patches. Forge fire-fried dough reminds us of an era when everything was earned the hard way. There was no room for waste and no time for finesse. Just fuel, flour, fat, and fire. And as we press on through these forgotten tastes of America's working class, the embers of stories like these still glow beneath the ashes, waiting to be remembered, one bite at a time. As the shrill clang of the factory punch clock echoed through the early morning fog, the working class of America's industrial towns filed into textile mills, garment factories, and steel plants. Their wages were low, their hours long, but they carried with them a quiet determination, and sometimes a pocket-wrapped bundle of something warm and starchy: punch clock potato cakes. These weren't the delicate, butter-laced potato pancakes of today. This was survival food, hammered out in soot-darkened kitchens by mothers and wives who stretched every morsel to its limit. With leftover boiled potatoes from the night before, a bit of onion, maybe some flour or cornmeal, and bacon grease scraped from a tin can, they created hearty, flat potato cakes that crisped up in a skillet before sunrise. These cakes were compact, dense, and slightly charred at the edges, easy to carry, easy to eat cold or hot, and packed with just enough calories to keep a worker going till the next whistle blew. Some added a crack of black pepper or a pinch of mustard seed if they could afford it. Others mixed in grated turnip or carrot. But always, the base remained the same: leftover potatoes, held together with hope and grit. They weren't glamorous, and they weren't served on plates. These cakes were wrapped in wax paper or tucked into tin lunchboxes, eaten on loading docks or in the shadows of conveyor belts. And when times got even leaner, the cakes got thinner, more flour, less potato. Yet they endured. Punch clock potato cakes represent more than a forgotten recipe. They symbolize the ingenuity of America's working poor, especially the women who fed entire families on scraps and determination. It's the flavor of factory whistles, steam-filled mornings, and unbreakable spirit. And as we peel back these stories, recipe by recipe, we don't just recover meals, we recover memories. Stay with us because we're not done yet. There's still more from the heart of America's industrial kitchens that deserves to be brought back to life. The roar of steam and the hiss of pistons filled the air as iron beasts thundered across the landscape, laying the bones of America's industrial age. But deep behind the mechanical marvels, in soot-streaked bunkhouses and ramshackle depots, another kind of fuel simmered quietly in dented pots: steam engine stew. This was not the elegant stew of polished dining cars. This was grit food, built from scraps, bones, and whatever was left behind at the butcher's counter. Factory hands, railway stokers, and yardmen would gather at day's end, pooling their meager findings: a knob of turnip, a handful of barley, a strip of fatback, maybe even a beef knuckle with just enough marrow left to flavor the pot. They'd build their stew in old iron kettles perched on fire barrels or coal-fed stoves, letting it cook low and slow while stories of near misses and broken couplings filled the air. The broth grew dark and rich, thickened with potatoes or flour dumplings, absorbing the smoke and sweat of hard labor. Each pot was different, some spicy, some bland, some barely edible, but every batch was shared, and every spoonful was survival. Steam engine stew wasn't just a meal, it was an act of resistance. A refusal to go hungry in a system that worked men to the bone. It was a recipe written not with ingredients, but with instinct. Stretch it, salt it, stir it, and let it feed as many mouths as you can. This forgotten dish captures the soul of America's laboring class. Its resilience, its resourcefulness, and its hunger for more than just food. It fed the ones who fed the fire, who drove the steel, who built the bones of modern industry, and whose names history rarely remembers. But we do. One recipe at a time. And now, as we simmer closer to the final forgotten dishes, don't let this journey fade like steam in the wind. Stick with us, and if these stories feed your curiosity, subscribe. The table's still warm, and there's more to come. When the factory whistle blew and the sun dipped behind soot-choked skylines, most workers clocked out. But not everyone went home. For those stuck in the long grind of double shifts and endless overtime, there was no hot supper waiting, only what could be made from the bare bones of a pantry stretched thin. Enter the overtime oatmeal loaf, a forgotten staple of early 20th century factory towns. Born from desperation but sustained by grit, this loaf wasn't meat, and it wasn't quite bread either. It was a clever hybrid, part sustenance, part invention. Factory wives and single boarders would take leftover breakfast oats, cold and congealed, mix them with lard, chopped onions, stale breadcrumbs, and just enough flour to hold it all together. If they had a bit of bacon grease or beef drippings, they'd stir it in for flavor. Then it was pressed into a pan and baked until crisp on the outside, tender inside. The result? A dense, hearty slab that could be eaten hot with mustard or cold by hand straight from a lunch pail. It had to last. Sometimes it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, fueling 14-hour shifts under the glare of gaslight and the whine of iron. But this loaf carried more than calories. It held the imprint of resilience. In towns where pay was late, meat was a luxury, and time off was a dream, the overtime oatmeal loaf stood as a quiet rebellion. A refusal to go hungry. A message passed down through grease-stained recipe cards and hand-me-down cast iron, "We'll make do, and we'll survive." It was the food of the invisible class, the ones who kept the belts turning and the furnaces burning. The ones whose stories rarely made headlines but who built the backbone of industrial America. So the next time you see a loaf of something humble, remember, it might just hold a century of survival within it. Stay with us, because we're not done unearthing what history left behind. And if these lost flavors move you, hit that subscribe button. The next bite is just around the corner. In the grinding, clanging world of early 20th century factory towns, food was often an afterthought, a simple necessity to keep tired hands moving and weary bodies standing. But among the smoke and sweat, small moments of comfort emerged, like the ritual of the factory floor fish fry. This humble dish was a Friday tradition for many factory workers, especially in towns near rivers or lakes where fresh fish could be caught or cheaply obtained. The fish was usually the humble, hardy species, like perch, catfish, or even river chubs, not the fancy fillets of today's markets. Fish, often caught by hand or borrowed from local fishermen, was cleaned, sliced, and dredged in a simple mixture of cornmeal and flour, sometimes with a pinch of salt and pepper for flavor. Then it was fried in lard or grease scavenged from the factory kitchen or local butcher, sizzling loudly in cast iron skillets over a fire or wood stove. The crispy, golden crust gave way to flaky, tender flesh inside, a rare treat in a diet usually heavy on bread, potatoes, and beans. Paired with whatever cabbage or potatoes were affordable, the fish fry became a moment of celebration, a brief escape from the relentless pace of the assembly line. Families and co-workers would gather in cramped kitchens or outside on rough-hewn benches, passing plates and sharing stories. The fish fry wasn't just food, it was community. A small rebellion against the monotony and hardship of factory life, binding together the workers with flavors and fellowship. Though largely forgotten today, the factory floor fish fry holds the flavors of resilience and shared survival, reminding us how food nourished more than just bodies. It fed spirits in the toughest times. As we close in on the final recipes of this series, remember, every bite of history carries a story. Stay hungry for more, and don't forget to subscribe. Our journey into America's forgotten kitchens is just beginning. As the factory whistle screamed and another shift ended, men and women poured out into the dusk, faces smudged with grease, muscles aching, boots worn thin. In the brief moments between rest and routine, one dish waited to welcome them home, the shift-changed shepherd's pie. This wasn't the elegant layered pie you might see on menus today. No, this was a survival dish, built from whatever scraps the family could gather. It began with minced meat, often beef or pork trimmings, sometimes even ground organ meat, sautéed with onions, garlic, or whatever vegetable scraps hadn't spoiled. Carrots, turnip ends, wilted celery, nothing was wasted. The filling was simmered slowly, thickened with a spoonful of flour and flavored with leftover broth or lard. Then came the crown, a layer of mashed potatoes, coarsely whipped and often stretched with milk from the neighbor's cow or even water. Sometimes, breadcrumbs were scattered on top if potatoes were in short supply. It was all baked in a battered tin or cast iron pan, often alongside the laundry or on the hearth where the day's heat was still lingering. The crust would turn golden, edges crisping slightly, sending the smell of something warm and whole into the cold air of a working-class home. This dish meant more than just food. It was a symbol of someone thinking ahead, of care packed into every layer. It was a moment of stillness before the next shift, a way to feed not just the body, but the soul. For many factory town families in the early 1900s, shepherd's pie was more than dinner. It was a routine, a rhythm that marked the passing days. It held the warmth of home, even when home was little more than four walls and a leaky roof. And now, we near the final stop on this forgotten food journey. If these stories and flavors stir something inside you, memories, curiosity, or hunger, then stay with us. Subscribe, because the last chapter still simmers ahead, and you won't want to miss what's cooking next. As the lunch whistle shrieked across the factory yards and dusty town streets, Workers grabbed their tin pails and found a quiet patch of earth. Inside those battered tins, more often than not, rested something humble, something sacred: lard biscuits. These weren't bakery-soft delicacies or butter-drenched showpieces. No, lunch whistle lard biscuits were born of thrift, labor, and resilience. Made with the barest essentials: flour, salt, baking soda, and most importantly, rendered pork lard, they were the working man's bread. Lard was cheaper than butter, stored longer, and added a rich depth that no factory catalog could reproduce. The dough was mixed quickly, rolled thick with floured hands on splintered boards, then baked in cast iron pans over coal stoves or open hearths. The result? A dense, flaky, slightly crisp biscuit that soaked up gravy, paired with jam, or simply stood alone, filling bellies and fueling bodies. Sometimes, a slice of salted pork or a smear of sorghum molasses would be tucked between two halves. But often it was just the biscuit itself, and still, it felt like comfort. It was a food of hands, hands that built railways, packed meat, spun thread, and assembled America one bolt at a time. These biscuits were more than food. They were survival in flour and fat, folded and baked into something that whispered, "We will get through today." And now, as we close this journey through forgotten kitchens, battered pans, and smoke-stained memories, I want to say this. Thank you for walking beside me through the true soul of American food, not the glamorous, but the gritty. The recipes that history forgot, but families never did. If these stories moved you, if they stirred something deeper than just hunger, then join this table permanently. Subscribe. Be part of a community that honors the past with every bite, every word, every frame. Because we're not done yet. There are more recipes buried in time, and together, we're going to dig them up.